may think we know everything there is to know about celebrities, but you'd be surprised just how many secrets have been kept about some of our favorite Hollywood stars. It turns out that a surprising amount of celebrities have FBI files on them, and it's super fascinating but also super mysterious. Let's talk about some of those celebrities today as we count down the top 10 celebrities who are being watched by the FBI. At number 10, Steve Jobs. We all know Steve Jobs as the incredible man who co-created Apple. He was considered one of the technological pioneers of the 70s and 80s. As a man of such renown, obviously people wanted to work with him, even the most powerful people in the country like the president. His reputation and the government's desire to have Steve on their staff is the reason why there is an FBI file on the Apple co-founder. Steve had a declassified 200-page report on him that took an in-depth look into his past, his relationships with others, and anything else that would solidify or refute his potential position in the government. Back then, Steve was being considered for position in President George Bush Sr.'s expert council. Before being able to really offer him the job, however, an extensive background check had to be conducted, and it exposed Steve's past of using illegal substances while he was in college. It also looked into the way he worked with others, and it was discovered that he's the type of person who always needed to have things go their way, and that he, quote, alienated people at Apple Computers as a result of his ambition. At number 9, Marilyn Monroe. Given her complicated and highly speculated connection to some of the most important people in the government, it really comes as no surprise to find out that Marilyn Monroe had an FBI file on her. It may surprise you to know, however, that Marilyn's connection to the Kennedys wasn't the only reason why she had an FBI report under her name. It turns out that the Hollywood bombshell was quite close to a lot of people with different political views that the US government were understandably apprehensive about. Other than the Kennedys, one person who made a number of appearances throughout Marilyn's file was a man named Arthur Miller. Arthur, a playwright, was Marilyn's third husband, but the government had their suspicions of him as he was suspected to have had communist associations in the 1940s. Other than Arthur Miller, another person who was noted on Marilyn's document was Frederick Vanderbilt Field, a leftist political activist from a wealthy family whom the government had been taking interest in. Perhaps the most interesting bit of information in the files, however, are the theories as to how Marilyn died. There are a number of conspiracy theories on whether or not something more sinister happened to the Hollywood icon. Before we carry on talking about the celebrities who have FBI files, why not take a moment to leave a like on this video if you're enjoying it so far, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button to see more videos like this one. At number 8, Charlie Chaplin. Although Charlie Chaplin was one of the first big Hollywood icons, he was also considered to be pretty sus as far as the government was concerned. After rising to fame in the silent film scene, Charlie Chaplin gained a lot of notoriety, but this also caused the government to want to take a deeper look into his life, and in 1922, the FBI opened a file on the actor. This file later grew to span over 2,000 pages as the government had suspected Chaplin of being a communist sympathizer and a potential threat to US security. The FBI first got this idea that perhaps Chaplin was against the American government after he used his comedy film Monsieur Verdoux to criticize capitalism and the use of weapons of mass destruction. Eventually, Chaplin and the American government became at odds with one another after Chaplin was denied re-entry into the US after taking a trip abroad in 1952. The actor eventually said enough is enough, and he and his wife moved to Switzerland where they lived until Charlie's passing. At number 7, John Lennon. During the 1960s, John Lennon's popularity was at an all-time high. Though this was great for his career, later on this seemingly posed a rather substantial threat to someone else, the president. Lennon gained a lot of popularity with young people, and because he was known to be vocal about his political beliefs, it was starting a trend of other people doing the same thing. This ended up being a pretty big problem for President Nixon in the 70s because he believed that Lennon's influence would pose a threat to his re-election. As a result, the Nixon administration, along with the FBI, put Lennon under surveillance and tried to find a way to get his visa revoked and have him deported. Years after Lennon's death, the public learned that the FBI had 281 pages of information on the musician, but not all the documents were released, as it was argued that some of the files included classified national security information that was too sensitive to be released to the public. All but 10 pages were released, but what do you think are on those missing pages? Leave me your thoughts down in the comments. At number 6, Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong was one of the most influential jazz musicians of all time. His career spanned over 5 decades and over different eras of jazz. Now, luckily for Louis, he was one of those celebrities whose names were included in FBI files but was never formally investigated as an individual. He was simply involved in an incident that involved the FBI. In November 1970, a bunch of jewelry worth around $30,000 was stolen from Century Plaza in Los Angeles, and the musician's name was given in connection to the investigation. investigation. He just so happened to be around at the time of the incident, which just had him involved with the FBI. I can imagine that this could be a little nerve-wracking at the time, but finding out about this investigation is a little cool, seeing that this legendary jazz musician was involved in something so mysterious. At number 5, Walt Disney. When you think of Walt Disney, you might think of Disneyland and those lovable Disney movies, but behind all that lies a man of mystery. There's a lot of stuff about Walt Disney that people don't know that can be pretty dark, including the fact that he worked with the FBI for part of his life, and there's a pretty extensive file on him. Walt Disney had a relationship with the FBI for almost 30 years, but luckily it wasn't for anything evil per se. Walt acted as an FBI informant, and his job was reporting people to the FBI whom he believed could be communists. So anyone he knew in Hollywood or even at his own company were being observed by the Disney founder and were being analyzed and investigated by the Bureau. Walt Disney's FBI file was around 600 pages long, and within that file it indicated that in exchange for his help, the FBI allowed Walt to film a handful of projects at their headquarters. At one point, Walt wanted to create a newsreel depicting FBI agents as heroes to help their public image. The Disney founder was eventually given a special title for his help with the agency and was dubbed Full Special Agent in Charge of Contact. At number 4, Albert Einstein. These days we know Albert Einstein as the genius scientist who gave us the theory of relativity, but back in his day he was considered a real threat that the US government and the FBI had a file on him. The Bureau had an extensive 1,800-page file on the scientist looking into his background, and let's just say that they didn't trust Einstein one bit. In an excerpt from his file it is written that, quote, "In view of his radical background, this office would not recommend the employment of Dr. Einstein on matters of a secret nature without a very careful investigation, as it seems unlikely that a man of his background could in such short time become a loyal American citizen." End quote. Among other theories about the scientist, the FBI believed that Einstein was a German spy simply given his background, and they were ready to deport him at a moment's notice if the reports were proven correct. At number 3, Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson, the legendary musical superstar immortalized as the King of Pop, was one of the most successful singers of all time. He had it all: the largely successful career, the fame, the fortune. He had it. He had everything. His death came as a shock to all of us, but what may also be a shock is the fact that the King of Pop was involved in a serious investigation with the FBI, and the agency had a file on him. Michael was making waves in the music industry, but come 1993 and again in 2004, Michael began making headlines after being accused of serious crimes for inappropriate behavior with an individual under the legal age. In both cases, Michael was brought to court, and the FBI was there to support local court systems with their own information that they had on the singer in regards to the cases. The FBI even tried to bring in the plaintiff from the 1993 case to testify at the 2004 case's trial, but the individual refused as they had previously settled out of court with Michael for a $15 million settlement. At number 2, Tupac Shakur. Rapper Tupac Shakur was truly one of those stars who were gone too soon, and to this day his death remains unsolved. He had a widely successful career, he sold 75 million albums worldwide, and he was also a pretty successful actor as well. On top of that, he was involved in the darker side of things too, having rivalries and conflicts with other notable rappers and producers like Notorious B.I.G. and Bad Boy Records. This rivalry is what caused Tupac to earn his very own FBI file because of the death threats that he had allegedly been receiving from a domestic group. According to Tupac's FBI files, this group who was targeting the rapper was also going after other artists, extorting money from them in exchange for protection from supposed enemies who wanted them eliminated. This could have something to do with the mystery surrounding Tupac's passing, but like I said, to this day, no one knows for sure what happened on that fateful September night in 1996. At number 1, Lucille Ball. Everyone loved Lucille Ball. She was a pioneer for women in the entertainment industry, blazing a trail for future female entertainers. She had countless shows and her own production studio, but she also had her own FBI file as she was being investigated by the agency on suspicions of anti-American ideals. It was suspected that Lucille was perhaps a communist, and of course the FBI had to look into this for matters of national security. This concern was first raised after it was discovered that when Lucille filed to vote in 1938, she listed her party as communist. Another reason why the FBI had their suspicions of Lucille was because of a rumor that alleged that the entertainer had picked up Japanese radio transmissions with her dental filling during World War II. Luckily for Lucille though, the FBI was never able to find any concrete evidence to suggest that she was any real threat to national security. Before we wrap things up for today, I want you guys to leave a comment down below telling me if you would ever want to work for the FBI. I feel like it could be an interesting job, but maybe it's been too glamorized by Hollywood. Leave me your thoughts on it down in the comments. Anyways, that's it for me. I've been your host, B-Room, and until next time, stay safe, make good choices, and stay groovy, friends.